Hello there, and welcome to the Sleep and Wonder channel. As you settle in, allow your breathing to slow and let the noise of the day gently fade into the background. There is nothing you need to focus on, nothing you need to keep track of. Just a quiet space opening, one calm breath at a time. Tonight we'll be entering the world of mushrooms, a hidden kingdom that lives mostly out of sight, beneath soil, wood, and forest floors. A world shaped by patience rather than speed, by connection rather than visibility. We'll explore how mushrooms grow, how vast networks spread silently underground, and how these ancient organisms have accompanied life on Earth for hundreds of millions of years. We'll move through forests, fields, mountains, and quiet landscapes, observing where mushrooms live, how they respond to change, and how they support balance, recovery, and renewal without ever drawing attention to themselves. Along the way, we'll touch on early human encounters, gentle stories and folklore, and the subtle ways mushrooms have influenced both ecosystems and human imagination. As this journey unfolds, you may notice your thoughts beginning to soften, your breathing growing slower and deeper, your body responding to the same calm rhythms that guide life beneath the surface of the world. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're gently invited to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, simply breathe in and breathe out. Let your body relax. Let your thoughts become lighter as we step quietly into the hidden, patient world of mushrooms. Let's begin. There is a kingdom that exists all around us, quietly present, patiently active, yet rarely noticed. It does not rise toward the sky like forests, nor does it stretch across the land like mountains. Instead, it spreads gently beneath our feet, within soil, wood, and shadow, working slowly, silently, far from attention. This is the kingdom of fungi. For a long time, mushrooms were thought of as plants. They grow from the ground, after all. They appear after rain. They belong to forests and fields, and they seem rooted in place. But fungi are neither plants nor animals. They form a kingdom of their own, distinct, ancient, and quietly complex. Plants create their own energy from sunlight. Animals consume and move. Fungi do something entirely different. They absorb, they transform, they connect. And most of the time they do so without ever being seen. When we notice a mushroom pushing gently through the soil, what we are seeing is not the organism itself, but only a small temporary expression, a kind of surface appearance. The true body of a fungus lives elsewhere, hidden beneath leaves, woven through soil, threaded through decaying wood. There exists a vast, delicate network known as mycelium. This network grows slowly, cell by cell, branch by branch, following moisture, nutrients, and opportunity, with no urgency, no central command, and no fixed shape. It spreads not upward but outward, not loudly but persistently. In many forests, a single fungal network can extend for meters, sometimes kilometers beneath the surface, and yet it leaves almost no visible trace. This hidden nature is part of what makes fungi so easy to overlook. They do not announce themselves. They do not dominate landscapes. They do not compete for light or height. They wait. They respond. They grow when conditions are right and remain still when they are not. The mushroom itself, the part we notice, photograph, or harvest, is only a moment in a much longer story. It is the fruiting body, a temporary structure designed to release spores to continue the cycle quietly elsewhere. Once its task is complete, it fades back into the background, leaving the underground network to continue its work. This rhythm, long periods of unseen growth followed by brief moments of visibility, has shaped fungi for hundreds of millions of years. In fact, fungi were among the earliest forms of complex life on land. Long before forests existed, long before animals walked the surface, fungi were already here, breaking down rock, forming soil, and preparing the land for what would come next. They are not newcomers, they are elders, and yet they remain remarkably adaptable. Fungi can survive in cold forests, dry grasslands, mountain soils, and deep underground environments where little else can live. Some grow slowly over decades. Others appear almost overnight, then disappear just as quickly. This flexibility comes from their way of living. Fungi do not rely on a single source of energy. They do not depend on sunlight. They do not need movement or speed. Instead, they respond to what already exists. They recycle. They reuse. They transform what has been left behind. In doing so, they quietly support nearly every ecosystem on Earth. Without fungi, fallen trees would remain where they fell. Leaves would accumulate endlessly. Nutrients would stay locked away, unavailable to plants and soil. The natural world would slow, not into calm, but into stagnation. Fungi prevent that stillness. They keep the cycle moving, and they do it patiently. There is something deeply calming about this way of existing. No rush, no competition for attention, no need to remain visible. Most of the work happens in silence, in darkness, out of sight. Only occasionally does the hidden world offer a small sign of itself. A mushroom emerging gently after rain, a cluster appearing along a fallen log, a quiet reminder that life continues below the surface. As we begin this journey into the world of mushrooms, it helps to release the expectation of spectacle. This is not a kingdom of drama or speed. It is a kingdom of subtlety. Its movements are measured in days, weeks, and seasons. Its structures are delicate yet persistent. Its influence is vast, even when it remains unseen. And perhaps that is why fungi feel so naturally aligned with rest. They exist in the background. They do not demand attention. They allow processes to unfold at their own pace. As you settle into this exploration, there is no need to remember every detail. There is no need to follow every idea. Simply allow the presence of this hidden kingdom to soften your awareness. A reminder that much of life happens quietly. That importance does not require visibility, and that beneath the surface of the world and beneath the surface of our thoughts, there are systems working patiently, holding everything together. In the next chapter, we will move gently downward, leaving the surface behind to explore where this hidden kingdom truly lives. Beneath the soil, within the underground world, where fungal life unfolds slowly, one silent thread at a time. Beneath the surface of the world we see, beneath leaves, stones, roots, and soil, there exists a layer of life that rarely receives attention. It is a world without light, without color in the way we usually understand it. A world shaped not by vision, but by moisture, texture, temperature, and time. This is where the true body of most fungi lives. While mushrooms appear briefly above ground, their real presence unfolds slowly below, in the dark, in the quiet, woven through the earth itself. This underground life takes the form of mycelium, a network of fine thread-like structures called hyphae. Each thread is almost impossibly thin, yet together they form vast systems that stretch through soil and organic matter, connecting one place to another without ever rising into view. Mycelium does not grow in straight lines. It branches, it adapts, it responds. When it encounters a stone, it curves around it. When it meets a root, it follows it. When nutrients are nearby, it expands gently in that direction. When conditions change, it slows or pauses, sometimes remaining still for long periods, waiting. This waiting is not inactivity, it is awareness. Unlike roots, mycelium does not anchor a single organism to one location. It spreads outward, forming a living fabric beneath the ground, flexible, responsive, and quietly persistent. In a single handful of healthy forest soil, there can be kilometers of these microscopic threads. An entire landscape of connections compressed into a space small enough to rest in the palm of your hand. And yet, this complexity produces no sound, no movement we can easily detect, no visible signal of effort. Life underground moves at a different pace. Here, growth is measured not in minutes or hours, but in gradual shifts. The slow decomposition of fallen leaves, the steady release of nutrients from wood and soil, the quiet exchange between living systems. Fungi play a central role in this underground process. They are among the primary decomposers of the natural world. When a tree falls, when leaves settle into the soil, when organic matter reaches the end of its visible life, fungi begin their work. They release enzymes that gently break down complex materials, transforming what was once solid and structured into forms that can be reused by the ecosystem. This is not destruction, it is transition. Matter does not disappear underground. It changes state. It becomes soil. It becomes nourishment. It becomes potential. Through this process, fungi quietly maintain the fertility of forests, the health of grasslands, and the balance of ecosystems across the planet. Without this underground life, the surface world would gradually lose its ability to renew itself. But the influence of mycelium extends beyond decomposition. In many environments, fungi form close relationships with plants, especially trees. These partnerships occur below ground, where fungal threads connect to plant roots in arrangements that benefit both. Through these connections, fungi help plants access water and minerals that roots alone might not reach. In return, plants provide fungi with sugars produced through photosynthesis. This exchange happens silently, continuously, without direction or control from above. It is cooperation at its most understated. These underground networks can link multiple plants together, creating pathways through which nutrients and signals move slowly across the soil. A forest, viewed from below, is not a collection of individual organisms, but a connected system held together by fungal threads, and yet none of this is visible to the eye. The underground world does not offer spectacle. It offers stability. It does not react quickly. It adjusts gradually. Temperature changes, move slowly through soil. Moisture shifts over days and seasons. Growth responds with patience rather than urgency. This environment encourages a kind of quiet persistence, a way of existing that values continuity over speed. It is a reminder that life does not need to be loud to be effective, that progress does not always announce itself, that some of the most important processes occur far from attention. There is something deeply grounding about this unseen world. It exists beneath everything, supporting forests, fields, and even cities, yet it remains largely unchanged by surface activity. Footsteps pass above, weather moves across the land, seasons come and go. Below, the mycelium continues its slow work. For those who spend time considering this hidden layer of life, it can shift the way the world feels. The ground beneath us becomes more than solid earth. It becomes alive with quiet motion, dense with relationships, steady with time, and perhaps this awareness offers something gentle in return. An invitation to slow down, to recognize that not everything needs to be visible to matter, that presence does not require performance, that growth can happen quietly, out of sight, without pressure. As we move forward in this exploration, the underground world sets the tone for everything that follows. Because from this hidden network, from this patient web beneath the soil, emerges the visible expression of fungal life, the mushroom itself. In the next chapter, we will gently rise back toward the surface to explore how mushrooms grow, how they appear, and how a long, silent process suddenly becomes visible in the most unhurried way. Mushrooms often seem to appear without warning. One day the forest floor looks unchanged. The next, small shapes rise gently from the soil, as if they had always been there, simply waiting for the right moment to be noticed. But nothing about the growth of a mushroom is sudden. What appears quickly above ground is the result of a long, patient process that begins far earlier, deep below the surface. The life of a mushroom begins not with a stem or a cap, but with something much smaller, a spore. Spores are microscopic, dust-like particles released quietly into the air, the water or the soil. They drift without direction, carried by wind, rain, insects, or gravity, until they settle somewhere new. Most spores never grow. They land in places that are too dry, too exposed, or lacking the right conditions. But occasionally a spore reaches an environment that feels welcoming. A patch of moist soil, a fallen log, a shaded forest floor. When that happens, growth begins. The spore sends out its first delicate thread, a single hypha, thin and nearly invisible. This thread does not rush, it explores. Slowly, it branches, then branches again. Over time, these threads weave together, forming the mycelium, the true body of the fungus. This stage of growth can last for months, years, or even decades. During this time, nothing appears above ground. The fungus remains hidden, quietly expanding its network, absorbing nutrients, responding to moisture and temperature. The mycelium grows outward rather than upward, spreading through its environment like a living map. It does not follow a blueprint. It adjusts constantly, changing direction when it encounters obstacles, slowing when conditions are poor, accelerating gently when resources are plentiful. This underground growth is where most of a mushroom's life unfolds. The visible mushroom, the cap, the stem, the gills, is not the organism itself, but a temporary structure created for a specific purpose. Reproduction. When conditions above ground align, often after rainfall, during periods of steady moisture, and within a suitable temperature range, the mycelium shifts its energy. Instead of expanding outward, it begins to concentrate growth in one place. Cells multiply more rapidly, tissues organize, pressure builds gently beneath the soil. Then, slowly, a mushroom begins to form. It pushes upward, not through force, but through steady expansion. Cells absorb water, causing the structure to lengthen and rise. Within hours or days, what was once invisible becomes visible. A mushroom emerges. Its shape is precise, but not hurried. A stem lifts carefully. A cap unfolds gradually. Gills or pores arrange themselves beneath the surface, ready to release the next generation of spores. This entire structure exists for a brief time. Some mushrooms last only a day or two. Others persist for weeks. A few remain for months. But eventually their task is complete. Spores are released quietly into the surrounding environment, drifting away to begin the cycle again. Once that purpose is fulfilled, the mushroom softens, collapses, and returns to the soil. The mycelium remains. This cycle, long periods of unseen growth followed by brief moments of visibility, is central to the way fungi live. They do not maintain constant presence above ground. They appear only when conditions are right. There is no attempt to grow larger than necessary. No effort to remain visible beyond their moment. In this way, mushrooms embody efficiency without urgency. Their growth is responsive, not forced. They do not compete for space in the way plants might. They do not seek dominance or height. They simply grow when it makes sense to do so. This responsiveness is part of what allows fungi to thrive in so many environments. Some mushrooms grow in dense forests, others in open grasslands. Some appear in cold climates, others in warm, humid regions. Each species responds to a specific combination of moisture, temperature, and available nutrients. Growth is not dictated by a calendar, but by readiness. In this way, the growth of mushrooms mirrors natural rhythms rather than fixed schedules. Rain arrives, moisture lingers, temperatures stabilize, and quietly, the mycelium responds. There is something deeply calming in this process. No anticipation, no anxiety about timing, only attention to conditions as they are. Growth happens when the environment supports it. Rest happens when it does not. The mushroom does not question this rhythm. It does not resist it. It grows, releases, and fades, leaving behind a living network ready to continue the cycle. For those who observe this process, it offers a gentle reminder that not all growth needs to be visible. That preparation can take far longer than expression. That emergence does not need to be dramatic to be meaningful. As we learn how mushrooms grow, we begin to see them not as sudden appearances, but as quiet conclusions to long, invisible journeys. And with that understanding, our attention naturally shifts toward what we see above ground, the many forms, colors, and structures that mushrooms take when they finally reveal themselves. In the next chapter, we will explore this visible diversity, examining the shapes and textures that emerge from the hidden world below, each one a brief, gentle expression of a much deeper life. When mushrooms finally rise into view, they do so with a remarkable variety of forms. No two forests display them in quite the same way. No single shape defines what a mushroom should look like. Instead, they appear as an unfolding collection of quiet designs, each one shaped by function, environment, and long adaptation to place. Some mushrooms grow tall and slender, their stems lifting gently upward, their caps resting lightly on top, balanced and still. Others remain low to the ground, spreading outward rather than upward, forming shelves, fans, or rounded clusters along fallen logs and tree trunks. There are mushrooms shaped like umbrellas, bells, cups, buttons, and delicate folds. Some resemble coral formations, others look like small cushions resting quietly on the forest floor. These forms are not decorative choices, they are practical expressions of how each species releases spores, interacts with air currents, and responds to moisture and gravity. Yet despite their functional origins, there is an undeniable beauty in their variety. Colors too emerge with surprising subtlety. Many mushrooms appear in soft, muted tones, whites, creams, pale browns, gentle grays, and quiet beiges that blend seamlessly into soil and leaf litter. Others carry deeper shades, warm ochres, rusted oranges, muted reds, and cool, earthy blues. Some display faint patterns or gradients, with edges lighter than their centers, or surfaces marked by fine lines and textures that catch the light softly. Rarely are these colors bright or reflective. Most mushrooms absorb light rather than reflect it, appearing calm, matte, and grounded. Their surfaces feel designed for touch rather than display, smooth, velvety, fibrous, or softly ridged. Even when vibrant, their colors tend to feel quiet, as if they belong to shadow rather than sunlight. This restraint is part of their presence. Mushrooms do not compete visually with flowers. They do not seek attention from afar. They invite closer observation instead. Often they are noticed only when one slows down, when walking becomes unhurried, when the eyes adjust to the patterns of the forest floor. Seen up close, their details reveal a careful organization. Gills arranged in neat, radiating lines, pores forming fine, repeating patterns, caps that curve, flatten, or ripple at the edges as they mature. Each structure serves a purpose, guiding air movement, supporting spore release, or protecting delicate tissues beneath. And yet none of this feels mechanical. There is a softness to mushroom design, a sense of balance between structure and impermanence. Their bodies are firm enough to stand, yet fragile enough to return easily to the soil. They exist without heaviness, without resistance. This quality makes mushrooms feel temporary in the most gentle way. They arrive quietly. They remain briefly. They fade without disturbance. There is no trace of struggle in their departure, no visible mark left behind. The forest absorbs them back into itself, and the cycle continues unnoticed. In this way, mushrooms embody a kind of beauty that does not seek permanence. They do not aim to endure above ground. They aim only to complete their moment. For those who encounter them, this fleeting presence can feel calming rather than sad. There is relief in knowing that not everything must last to be meaningful. That beauty can exist for a short time, serve its purpose, and then gently dissolve. Many cultures have been drawn to mushrooms not because of their size or strength, but because of this quiet elegance. They appear like small sculptures placed by nature, carefully positioned, often in shaded corners and overlooked spaces. They reward attention but never demand it, and perhaps that is why they feel so aligned with stillness. Their shapes do not suggest urgency, their colors do not stimulate the senses. Their presence invites calm observation. To look at a mushroom closely is to be reminded that complexity does not need to be loud. That form can follow function without becoming rigid. That beauty can exist comfortably within shadow. As we continue this journey, this visual diversity leads us naturally toward deeper questions. If mushrooms take on so many shapes and colors, each adapted so precisely to its environment, what roles do they play beyond appearance? How do these quiet forms participate in the larger systems of nature? In the next chapter, we will move beyond what mushrooms look like and explore what they do, the subtle purposes they serve within ecosystems that depend on their presence, often without ever noticing it. At first glance, mushrooms may seem like quiet decorations of the forest floor, small forms appearing briefly, adding texture and softness to the landscape, then disappearing again. But beneath this gentle presence lies a purpose both simple and profound. Mushrooms are not here by chance. They are not passive observers of the natural world. They are active participants in processes that keep ecosystems moving, balanced, and alive. Their purpose begins where many other life forms end. When leaves fall from trees, when branches break, when wood ages and collapses, a transformation must take place. Without this transformation, the forest would slowly become overwhelmed by what once lived. Mushrooms step quietly into this moment. Through the hidden work of their mycelium, fungi break down complex organic material into simpler forms. They release enzymes that gently dissolve what is no longer needed in its original shape, allowing nutrients to return to the soil. This process is not abrupt. It is gradual, measured, and steady. Wood softens over time. Leaves lose their structure. Organic matter becomes soil, rich, dark, and full of potential. In this way, mushrooms serve as recyclers of the natural world. They do not remove life, they redistribute it. The nutrients released through fungal activity become available to plants, to microorganisms, and eventually to animals. Nothing is wasted, nothing is rushed. This quiet efficiency is one of the defining purposes of fungi. Without mushrooms and their underground networks, ecosystems would struggle to renew themselves. Growth would slow, soil would lose fertility, and the balance between life and decay would falter. Yet fungi do not work alone. Their purpose extends beyond decomposition into cooperation. Many mushrooms form close relationships with plants, especially trees. creating partnerships that benefit both. Below ground, fungal threads connect to plant roots, expanding the reach of those roots far beyond their physical limits. Through these connections, fungi help plants access water and minerals that would otherwise remain out of reach. In return, plants share sugars produced through photosynthesis. This exchange happens continuously, without planning, without awareness, and without interruption. It is a quiet agreement, maintained over long periods of time. Through these partnerships, mushrooms support the growth of forests, the stability of grasslands, and the resilience of many ecosystems. Their purpose then is not singular. They recycle, they connect, they support, they act as intermediaries between life stages, between organisms and between cycles. And they do so without ever taking the spotlight. Unlike animals, mushrooms do not move to perform their role. Unlike plants, they do not grow toward the sun. They remain where they are needed, responding to conditions as they arise. This responsiveness is central to their function. Fungi do not impose order on the environment. They respond to it. When moisture increases, they expand. When nutrients are scarce, they slow. When conditions become unfavorable, they wait. This ability to pause is part of their purpose as well. It allows ecosystems to adapt gradually, without shock or imbalance. In disturbed environments, fungi are often among the first organisms to return. They prepare the ground for what follows, stabilizing soil and reintroducing nutrients. In this sense, mushrooms act as quiet caretakers of transition. They appear when change is needed and fade when their work is done. There is something deeply calming about this role. Mushrooms do not seek recognition for their contribution. They do not announce completion. They simply continue their work, cycle after cycle. Their purpose is not measured by visibility, but by continuity. And perhaps this offers a subtle lesson. That usefulness does not require noise. That contribution does not require permanence. That systems can function beautifully when each part responds gently to what is needed in the moment. As we observe the purpose of mushrooms, we begin to see them not as isolated organisms, but as part of a larger living conversation, one that includes forests, soil, water, and time. This understanding naturally leads us forward. If mushrooms play such a central role within ecosystems, how do they interact specifically with forests, the environments where many of them are most often found? In the next chapter, we will explore the close relationship between mushrooms and forests, and how these two quiet systems support one another in ways that shape the living world above and below the ground. Forests and mushrooms have grown together for a very long time. Long before forests looked the way they do today, long before trees formed dense canopies and layered understories, fungi were already present in the landscape, working quietly with the earliest plants to shape the living surface of the earth. This long companionship has never been dramatic. It has unfolded slowly beneath leaves and soil through seasons and centuries. To understand forests fully, it helps to look not only at trunks and branches, but at what lies beneath them. Because a forest is not held together by trees alone. Beneath the forest floor, mushrooms form a vast living foundation that supports nearly everything growing above it. Tree roots do not exist in isolation. They extend into soil that is already alive with fungal threads. In many forests, the roots of trees and the mycelium of fungi intertwine so closely that one cannot function well without the other. This relationship is ancient and deeply balanced. Fungi help trees reach water and minerals that lie far beyond the reach of roots alone. Their fine threads move easily through tiny spaces in the soil, absorbing nutrients and guiding them gently toward plant roots. In return, trees share sugars produced in their leaves, sending energy downward into the soil to support the fungal networks below. This exchange happens continuously, without interruption, day and night, season after season. It is not directed, it is not managed. It simply responds to presence and need. Through these underground connections, a forest becomes more than a collection of individual trees. It becomes a system. Nutrients move quietly from one area to another. Water is redistributed. Resources are shared. Some trees receive more support when they are young. Others rely more heavily on fungal partners during periods of stress, such as drought or poor soil conditions. All of this happens without visibility, without sound, and without urgency. The forest above remains still and familiar. The forest below remains active and attentive. Mushrooms also play a central role in maintaining the physical structure of forests. When leaves fall, when branches break, when trees reach the end of their life cycle, fungi step in gently. They soften fallen wood, break down leaf litter, and gradually return organic material to the soil. This process creates the rich, dark forest floor that supports new growth. Without fungi, forests would slowly lose their ability to regenerate. Soil would become thin and depleted. Nutrients would remain locked inside dead material, unable to re-enter the cycle of life. Mushrooms prevent this stagnation. They ensure that forests remain dynamic, even when everything appears still. This quiet renewal is one of the reasons forests feel so calming to humans. The environment does not feel rigid or exhausted. It feels alive, but unhurried. Even fallen trees do not signal loss. They signal transformation. A fallen log becomes a place of activity, hosting fungi, insects, and microorganisms that slowly return it to the forest. In time, that same material becomes soil again, supporting new plants, new roots, and new fungal networks. The forest does not rush this process, neither do the mushrooms. They work at the pace of moisture, temperature, and time. Mushrooms also influence the diversity of forests. Different fungal species prefer different trees, different soils, and different microclimates. This variety encourages a wide range of plant life, preventing any single species from dominating entirely. The result is a forest that feels layered and balanced, not uniform, not chaotic, but quietly diverse. Some mushrooms appear only in old forests, where the soil has remained undisturbed for many years. Others thrive in younger forests, helping stabilize newly forming ecosystems. Together they guide forests through stages of growth, rest, and renewal. From the surface, a forest may look unchanged year after year, but beneath the ground, relationships shift gently. Networks expand or contract. Resources move where they are needed. Mushrooms make this flexibility possible, And perhaps this is why forests feel so deeply restorative. They are not static. They are not fragile in the way we often imagine. They are supported by systems designed for patience. When one tree struggles, others remain steady. When one part of the forest changes, the underground network adjusts quietly. There is no alarm, no urgency, just response. For those who spend time in forests, this unseen cooperation may never be consciously noticed, yet the feeling it creates is unmistakable. A sense that the space is held, that life here is interconnected, that nothing stands alone. Mushrooms help create that feeling. They do not demand attention, but they shape the experience of the forest in profound ways. As we move forward in this journey, this idea of connection becomes even more expansive. Because fungal networks do not stop at the roots of trees. They extend further, linking multiple plants, multiple species, and sometimes entire forest sections together. In the next chapter, we will explore these wider connections, the fungal networks that form a quiet web of life beneath the ground, binding ecosystems together in ways that are only now beginning to be understood. Beneath forests, fields, and quiet landscapes, life is rarely isolated. What appears separate above ground often exists as part of something much larger below. Roots touch soil. Soil touches fungi. Fungi touch other roots. And through these gentle points of contact, a quiet web begins to form. This web is not made of lines or pathways we can easily trace. It has no clear beginning and no obvious end. It expands where conditions allow and rests where they do not. It is shaped by moisture, by temperature, by time. This is the fungal network, a living system that connects life below the surface in ways that are subtle, gradual, and deeply stabilizing. Unlike structures designed by humans, fungal networks have no central control. There is no single point of direction, no command center. Each part responds locally, adjusting gently to what it encounters. If nutrients appear in one area, growth shifts quietly in that direction. If conditions become less favorable, expansion slows or pauses. Over time, these small adjustments create networks that extend across large areas of soil. In some ecosystems, a single fungal network may connect many plants together, not through rigid channels, but through countless fine threads that overlap, separate, and rejoin. This connectivity allows resources to move slowly through the soil. Water can be shared. Minerals can travel short distances. Nutrients released in one place may eventually support growth elsewhere. This movement is not fast. It is not directed with urgency. It happens gradually, often over long periods, without visible change above ground. Through these networks, plants become part of a larger system. They remain individual organisms, yet they are no longer entirely alone. A forest, viewed from below, resembles a woven fabric rather than a collection of separate parts. Threads cross and recross. Connections form and loosen. Balance emerges without planning. This quiet organization is one of the reasons ecosystems remain resilient. When conditions change in one area, the network can adapt. Resources may shift. Growth patterns adjust. There is no sudden collapse, no immediate failure. Instead, the system absorbs change slowly, redistributing pressure over time. Fungal networks also play a role in maintaining diversity within ecosystems. Because different fungi associate with different plants, no single species gains unchecked dominance. Support is distributed. Balance is preserved. This creates environments that feel layered and stable, rather than fragile or extreme. And yet all of this complexity exists without awareness. The network does not know it is a network. It does not aim to connect. It simply grows, responds, and persists. There is something deeply calming about this kind of organization. No urgency, no competition for control, no need for visibility. Life continues through cooperation rather than command. These underground connections also remind us that separation is often an illusion. Above ground, trees stand apart from one another. Plants occupy their own spaces. Mushrooms appear briefly, then vanish. Below ground, everything overlaps. Boundaries soften. Transitions become gradual. Life blends quietly into life. The web does not erase individuality. It supports it. Each organism continues its own cycle, yet remains part of a larger movement that sustains the whole. For those who reflect on this hidden connectivity, it can gently change how the world feels. The ground beneath us becomes less solid, less static. It feels alive with quiet exchange. Not busy, not restless, simply attentive. There is no signal when nutrients move through the soil. No sound when connections strengthen or fade. The process unfolds slowly, beyond perception. And perhaps this is why fungal networks resonate so strongly with a sense of calm. They demonstrate that complex systems do not need constant attention. That balance can emerge without effort, that life can organize itself without pressure or noise. As we consider this web of life beneath our feet, our focus naturally shifts again toward time. Because these networks did not form quickly, they developed over long periods through countless cycles of growth and rest. They carry memory in structure, not in thought. And this brings us gently toward the next part of our journey. In the next chapter, we will step back even further to explore how fungi have existed alongside life on Earth for immense spans of time, long before forests, long before humans, quietly shaping the world as we know it today. Long before forests formed their canopies, long before animals walked across solid ground, long before the world looked familiar in any way, fungi were already here. They did not arrive suddenly. They did not claim territory. They simply appeared, quietly accompanying the earliest forms of life as the planet itself was still finding its balance. In the earliest chapters of Earth's history, the land was harsh and largely uninhabitable. Bare rock dominated the surface. Soil, as we know it today, did not yet exist. And yet, life found a way to move slowly forward. Fungi were among the first organisms to make this transition possible. They partnered with early plants, helping them survive on land by breaking down minerals, retaining moisture, and gradually contributing to the formation of soil. This cooperation was not planned. It emerged naturally as fungi and plants responded to shared conditions over immense spans of time. Together, they transformed rock into something softer, something fertile, something capable of sustaining more complex life. In this way, Fungi did not merely accompany life on land, they helped prepare the land itself. As ecosystems grew more complex, fungi remained quietly present. They adapted as forests emerged. They adjusted as climates shifted. They persisted through changes that reshaped continents and altered oceans. Through ice ages and warm periods, through mass extinctions and renewals, fungi endured. They did not dominate. They did not retreat. They continued doing what they had always done, connecting, decomposing, supporting, and quietly maintaining balance. This longevity gives fungi a unique place in the story of life on Earth. They are not recent participants. They are companions that have walked alongside life for hundreds of millions of years. Their structures carry this deep history within them. Mycelial networks grow in patterns shaped by ancient processes. Their biochemical tools evolved long before mammals existed. Their relationships with plants were established before forests resembled the ones we know today. Even now, modern ecosystems still rely on systems that were refined long ago. In many ways, the world continues to rest on fungal foundations laid down in deep time. What makes this companionship remarkable is its quiet continuity. Fungi did not require constant change to survive. They refined what worked and carried it forward. While other life forms evolved visible complexity, movement, senses, behaviors, fungi remained largely hidden, perfecting a way of life rooted in responsiveness rather than speed. They learned how to wait. They learned how to persist through conditions that favored patience over force. And this patience became their strength. Because fungi were already established beneath the surface, they were ready to support new forms of life as they emerged. Plants arrived, and fungi were there. Forests expanded and fungi followed. Animals appeared and fungi adapted. Humans eventually entered the scene and fungi remained quietly present, continuing their cycles unchanged. In this sense, fungi are not background characters in the story of life. They are constant companions. They do not seek attention, yet their absence would fundamentally alter the world. Without fungi, soil would thin, forests would weaken, nutrient cycles would falter. Life would continue, but it would be less stable, less resilient, less connected. There is something reassuring in this continuity. Fungi remind us that not all progress requires visibility, that some forms of intelligence are expressed through persistence rather than innovation. They show us that success can look like staying power, remaining useful, remaining adaptable, remaining quietly essential. When we consider fungi as ancient companions, our sense of time begins to shift. The lifespan of a mushroom becomes less important than the age of the system that produced it. A brief appearance on the forest floor is understood as part of a much longer story, stretching back into deep geological time. This perspective softens the present moment. It places our own lives within a wider rhythm, one where change happens gradually and where continuity matters as much as novelty. Perhaps this is why learning about fungi often brings a sense of calm. They exist outside urgency, outside trend, outside the need for constant transformation. They simply continue. As we rest with this understanding, we can feel the quiet comfort of knowing that life has been supported by steady companions for far longer than we can imagine. And with that sense of deep continuity, our journey naturally turns toward a more recent chapter, one in which humans began to notice, observe, and slowly form relationships with these ancient beings. In the next chapter, we will explore how mushrooms entered human awareness and how early people encountered, understood, and lived alongside these silent companions in their daily lives. Long before written language, long before cities or cultivated fields, humans lived in close contact with the natural world. Daily life unfolded outdoors, guided by seasons, weather, and landscape. Food was gathered, materials were observed, and knowledge grew slowly, passed from one generation to the next through quiet attention. In these early environments, mushrooms were already present. They appeared along forest paths, near fallen trees, in shaded clearings and damp soil. Sometimes briefly, sometimes repeatedly, returning to the same places year after year. Early humans did not encounter mushrooms as curiosities. They encountered them as part of the living landscape. Without names or classifications, they learned to notice patterns. Which mushrooms appeared after rain, which returned to the same spot, which grew near certain trees or during specific seasons. This knowledge did not develop quickly. It formed gradually, through observation rather than explanation. People learned by watching, by remembering, by paying attention to small details over long periods of time. Mushrooms became part of this quiet learning. Some were recognized as nourishing, appearing in times of abundance and offering sustenance without cultivation. Others were avoided, not through fear, but through careful distinction and respect for the unknown. There were no manuals, no written guides, only experience, shared stories, and careful restraint. This relationship with mushrooms was neither dominant nor distant. It was attentive. Early humans did not seek to control fungi. They responded to them. They noticed that mushrooms arrived when the land was moist, when temperatures softened, when the forest felt receptive. They observed how quickly mushrooms appeared and how gently they disappeared. From this, an understanding emerged, that mushrooms were temporary, that they required timing, that they belonged to moments rather than permanence. This understanding shaped how mushrooms were approached. Gathering was done with care. Only certain mushrooms were taken. Others were left undisturbed. The forest was not emptied, it was visited. Over time, mushrooms became woven into early human culture in subtle ways. They were part of meals, shared quietly around fires. They were noticed during walks, their appearance marking changes in weather or season. In some places, they became associated with renewal, appearing after rain when the land felt refreshed. In others, they were simply accepted as part of the forest's rhythm, neither celebrated nor feared, just present. This calm relationship stands in contrast to the way mushrooms are sometimes viewed today. Early humans did not rush to define or categorize them. They did not seek immediate explanation. They allowed mushrooms to remain partly unknown. And this acceptance of uncertainty was a natural part of life. Living closely with the land meant understanding that not everything needed to be named to be respected, that usefulness could exist without full comprehension. That observation was often enough. Mushrooms also offered early humans a reminder of the invisible world beneath the surface. They appeared suddenly, without obvious cause. They emerged from soil and wood, as if the earth itself had spoken briefly. This quiet emergence may have encouraged a sense of attentiveness, a habit of noticing small changes in the environment. Over time, this attentiveness shaped broader relationships with nature. People learned to read the land not through force, but through familiarity. They learned where to walk, where to pause, and where to leave things as they were. Mushrooms fit naturally into this way of living. They were not central to survival, yet they were never ignored. They existed at the edges of daily awareness, present, acknowledged, but not demanding. In this sense, early human relationships with mushrooms were guided by balance, neither obsession nor indifference, neither fear nor domination, just quiet coexistence. As human societies slowly changed, as agriculture developed and people began shaping landscapes more directly, this relationship evolved. But the earliest encounters between humans and mushrooms set a tone that would persist for thousands of years, a tone of curiosity without urgency, of use without excess, of respect for what grows briefly and disappears on its own terms. As we reflect on these early interactions, it becomes clear that mushrooms were never separate from human experience. They were part of the environment humans learned to read, part of the subtle language of the land. And from these early observations, something else began to form: stories, not explanations, but meanings, associations, symbols, and quiet interpretations that moved beyond practical use into imagination. In the next chapter, we will explore how mushrooms entered myth, folklore, and storytelling, not as objects of fear or spectacle, but as symbols shaped by their mysterious appearance and gentle disappearance. When humans began to tell stories, they often turned to what felt both familiar and strange: the land, the sky, the forest, and quietly, the small forms that appeared and vanished without explanation. Mushrooms entered human stories, not as loud symbols, but as subtle presences. They did not roar or shine. They emerged softly, often overnight, then disappeared again. This behavior invited imagination. Across many cultures, mushrooms were noticed not for what they did, but for how they appeared. They rose from the ground without visible roots. They arrived after rain, as if summoned by the earth itself. They gathered in circles, clusters, or solitary forms in places that felt untouched. To early observers, this made mushrooms feel liminal, belonging neither fully to the surface nor entirely to the hidden world below. In folklore, such things often become bridges. In parts of Europe, rings of mushrooms were seen as places where the ordinary rules of the world softened. They were not considered dangerous by default, but different. Spaces where time felt altered, where one should step lightly, where attention mattered. These stories did not necessarily warn of harm. They suggested awareness. Mushrooms, in this sense, were markers of transition, signs that the landscape held layers beyond immediate understanding. In other traditions, mushrooms appeared in stories as gifts of the forest. They were seen as offerings that arrived without cultivation, appearing when the land was ready, then leaving on their own. This reinforced a sense of timing. Mushrooms did not belong to ownership. They belonged to moments. They arrived when conditions aligned and could not be forced to stay. In this way, they became symbols of impermanence and appropriate use. Take what is offered, leave what is not. In some cultures, mushrooms were associated with renewal. Their appearance after rain felt like a quiet response from the land, a sign that the earth had absorbed moisture and was ready to share something in return. Stories grew around this rhythm, linking mushrooms to cycles of rest and return, to pauses followed by gentle re-emergence. These were not dramatic myths. They were calm explanations, woven into daily life. Mushrooms did not demand reverence. They invited it softly. In storytelling traditions, mushrooms often appear at the edges of narratives. A traveler notices them along a path. A child finds them near a fallen tree. A quiet moment unfolds in their presence before the story moves on. They rarely occupy the center. This mirrors their role in nature, present, important, but never dominant. Even in symbolic roles, mushrooms remained understated. They were not gods. They were signs, indicators that something unseen was active beneath the surface, that life continued beyond what the eye could follow, that the world held depth. In some traditions, mushrooms became associated with knowledge, not the kind that arrives through instruction, but the kind that comes from observation. The knowledge of when to walk slowly, when to pay attention, when to leave things untouched. This association did not elevate mushrooms to objects of worship. It placed them within the rhythm of learning that comes from living close to the land. Stories about mushrooms often carried this tone. They were reminders, not commands, suggestions, not rules. They encouraged patience. Across regions and cultures, these quiet meanings varied, but the underlying feeling remained consistent. Mushrooms were not symbols of chaos. They were symbols of the unknown that could be approached calmly. They represented the parts of life that unfold beyond control, yet remain integrated into the whole. As societies grew more complex, stories expanded, but mushrooms continued to occupy a gentle place in the collective imagination. They remained small. They remained temporary. They remained slightly out of reach. This allowed them to hold meaning without becoming overwhelming. They reminded people that mystery did not need to be solved to be respected, that not everything hidden was dangerous, that some things simply existed on their own terms. In modern retellings of folklore, mushrooms are sometimes exaggerated, made dramatic or fantastical. But when we look closely at older traditions, we often find something quieter, a tone of attentiveness, a suggestion of balance. Mushrooms appear as part of the environment's language, not as interruptions. They belong to the same world as trees, rain, and soil. They do not stand apart from nature. They deepen it. As we rest with these stories, we begin to see that mushrooms have always occupied a space between knowledge and imagination. They invite curiosity without demanding explanation. They encourage respect without fear. They offer meaning without permanence. And perhaps this is why they continue to feel so fitting for calm reflection. They exist at the meeting point between what is known and what is simply observed. As our journey continues, we move gently away from stories and back toward place. Because beyond myth and folklore, mushrooms live in specific environments, forests, fields, mountains, and soils that shape their forms and rhythms. In the next chapter, we will explore where mushrooms live and how their quiet presence adapts to landscapes across the world. Change rarely arrives all at once. In nature, it unfolds gradually, through small shifts in temperature, subtle variations in moisture, and slow alterations in the structure of the land. Mushrooms are deeply attuned to this kind of change. They do not resist it, they do not accelerate it, they respond. Because fungi live so closely connected to soil, organic matter, and climate, they often sense change before it becomes visible above ground. A slight increase in moisture, a longer period of warmth, a disturbance in the soil. These signals are enough to alter the quiet behavior of fungal networks. When environments shift, mushrooms adjust their timing. They may fruit earlier or later in the season. They may appear in new places or remain hidden longer than usual. Their flexibility is not dramatic. It is measured. This ability to respond rather than react has allowed fungi to persist through countless environmental changes over deep time. Ice ages came and went. Forests expanded and retreated. Seas rose and fell. Throughout all of this, fungi adapted quietly, altering growth patterns, refining relationships with plants, and continuing their essential work. This adaptability is one of their defining traits. Mushrooms do not require stability in the way some organisms do. They require opportunity. When land is disturbed by storms, fires, landslides, or floods, fungi are often among the first to return. They move into damaged soil, breaking down debris, stabilizing loose material, and preparing the ground for what will grow next. In this role, mushrooms do not erase change, they guide it. They help ecosystems transition from one state to another without abrupt collapse. Burned forests, for example, are not empty places. Beneath the surface, fungal networks often survive fires, protected by soil and organic layers. Afterward, they assist in breaking down charred material, releasing nutrients and supporting the return of plants. This slow recovery is not visible at first. The landscape may appear still, quiet, or even lifeless. But beneath the surface, change is already being processed. Mushrooms also respond to human-driven changes, though not always in ways we immediately notice. Altered land use, urban expansion, and climate shifts reshape the environments fungi inhabit. Some species decline, others adapt. New relationships form. This does not happen quickly. It unfolds across years and decades. Fungi adjust their presence based on what remains available. Soil composition, moisture retention, plant communities. They do not judge the change, they respond to it. This responsiveness makes mushrooms important indicators of environmental conditions. Their appearance or absence often reflects subtle shifts in ecosystems. Yet even here, there is no urgency. Mushrooms do not signal crisis. They signal transition. They remind us that change does not always arrive with noise. It can arrive quietly, altering patterns without announcing itself. For those who study ecosystems, fungi offer insight into resilience. They show that survival does not always depend on strength or speed, but on adaptability and patience. They demonstrate how systems can bend without breaking. This lesson carries beyond ecology. Mushrooms illustrate a way of existing that does not cling to fixed forms. They allow themselves to change shape, timing, and presence as conditions require. They remain rooted in function, even as surroundings shift. There is something calming in this approach. It suggests that change does not have to be disruptive to be meaningful. That adjustment can happen quietly. That continuity can exist even when forms transform. As we rest with this understanding, change begins to feel less threatening. It becomes part of a longer rhythm, one that fungi have followed for hundreds of millions of years. Change is not an interruption, it is a passage, and mushrooms, with their patient adaptability, walk alongside it. This perspective gently prepares us for the next chapter of our journey, because alongside change, there is another quiet quality woven deeply into the life of fungi: resilience. In the next chapter, we will explore how mushrooms endure, persist, and quietly support recovery, even in the face of loss and disturbance. Resilience in nature rarely looks dramatic. It does not announce itself with speed or force. It does not arrive fully formed. Instead, it unfolds quietly through patience, through repetition, through an ability to continue even when conditions are uncertain. Mushrooms embody this kind of resilience. They do not resist disruption directly. They adapt around it. When landscapes are disturbed by storms, fires, landslides, or decay, fungi do not attempt to restore what was lost exactly as it was. They begin somewhere else. Often they begin below the surface. After a forest fire, when trees are gone and the ground appears bare, fungal networks may still be present beneath the soil, protected from heat by layers of earth and organic matter. Though the surface looks altered, life below continues. These hidden networks begin processing what remains: charred wood, fallen debris, organic fragments left behind. Through slow decomposition, nutrients are released back into the soil. This process does not rebuild the forest immediately. It prepares the ground. Recovery in ecosystems is not a return, it is a transition. Mushrooms understand this implicitly. They do not aim to recreate the past. They support what comes next. In areas affected by storms or flooding, fungi stabilize soil by binding particles together. They reduce erosion. They help retain moisture. This quiet stabilization prevents further damage and allows plants to re-establish themselves over time. Again, nothing happens quickly. There is no visible signal of progress. No moment when recovery is complete. Instead, life resumes through small, steady adjustments. Mushrooms thrive in these in-between states. They appear where structures are loosening, where old forms are dissolving, and where space is opening for something new. In decaying logs, they soften rigid material, making it accessible again to the living system. In damaged soil, they restore structure and fertility gradually. Their resilience lies not in strength but in flexibility. Mushrooms do not depend on stable conditions, they depend on responsiveness. If conditions worsen, they slow down. If resources are scarce, they conserve energy. If the environment becomes receptive again, they resume their work. This ability to pause is a form of resilience often overlooked. In a world that values constant movement, fungi remind us that survival sometimes depends on knowing when to wait. Recovery too follows this rhythm. Mushrooms do not hurry recovery along, they support it gently. They create conditions in which other organisms can return. Plants grow more easily in soil enriched by fungi. Microorganisms flourish in environments stabilized by fungal activity. Animals, in turn, return as vegetation recovers. This chain of recovery is not linear. It moves forward, rests, and adjusts. Mushrooms remain present throughout, never at the center of attention, yet essential to the process. Even in heavily altered environments, abandoned fields, former industrial sites, or urban green spaces, fungi continue this work. They break down pollutants where possible. They rebuild soil structure. They create the foundation for life to re-enter spaces once thought depleted. This resilience does not erase damage. It works with what remains. There is honesty in this approach. Mushrooms do not pretend loss did not occur. They acknowledge it by transforming it. Dead material becomes nourishment. Disturbance becomes opportunity. Over time, what seemed broken becomes integrated into a new balance. This way of responding to disruption offers a quiet lesson. Resilience does not require returning to who we were before. Recovery does not demand perfection. It asks only for continuity, a willingness to keep participating in the cycle of life. Mushrooms participate without judgment. They do not distinguish between pristine forests and damaged landscapes. They respond to conditions, not ideals. This neutrality allows them to remain useful across many states of change. And perhaps this is why mushrooms feel so deeply calming to reflect upon. They show us that healing does not need to be forced, that repair does not have to be loud, that even after loss, life continues to reorganize itself quietly. As we rest with this understanding, the idea of recovery begins to soften. It no longer feels like a task to complete, but a process to allow. Mushrooms do not rush their work. They trust time. And through that trust, they help landscapes and life find balance again. This gentle resilience prepares us for the next movement in our journey. Because alongside recovery, there is another quiet quality woven into the presence of mushrooms, their ability to support stillness. In the next chapter, we will explore how mushrooms contribute not only to ecological balance, but to a sense of calm and stability within the environments they inhabit. Stability in nature is often misunderstood. It is not stillness. It is not permanence. It is not the absence of change. True stability is quieter than that. It is the ability of a system to remain balanced while everything within it continues to move. Mushrooms are essential to this kind of stability. They do not create fixed structures. They create conditions. They do not hold ecosystems in place. They allow them to adjust without falling apart. This quiet role is most visible when nothing seems to be happening. In a healthy forest, there is no obvious sign of fungal activity. Trees stand, leaves fall. Soil remains dark and soft. Everything appears calm. And yet, beneath this calm surface, mushrooms are continuously at work. They regulate the flow of nutrients. They moderate decomposition. They support root systems, they maintain soil structure. None of this demands attention. It simply allows the environment to remain steady over time. Quiet stability does not announce itself. It is felt rather than seen. Mushrooms contribute to this feeling by smoothing transitions. When organic material accumulates, they break it down slowly. When nutrients become unevenly distributed, they help move them gently through the soil. They prevent extremes. Too much buildup leads to stagnation. Too little leads to depletion. Fungal activity keeps ecosystems within a comfortable range. This balance is not exact. It is flexible. If conditions change, the system shifts slightly, then settles again. Mushrooms are well suited to this role because they respond continuously rather than intermittently. They do not wait for crisis. They operate quietly all the time. This constant low-intensity activity is what allows ecosystems to feel stable across seasons and years. Even when surface conditions fluctuate, temperature, rainfall, light, the soil below remains buffered. Moisture is retained. Structure is preserved. Life continues. This buffering effect is one of the reasons natural environments feel calming to humans. There are fewer sudden shifts, fewer sharp contrasts. Mushrooms soften the landscape in ways we often sense without consciously noticing. They reduce harshness. Hard wood becomes soft soil. Sharp boundaries become gradual transitions. Forest floors feel forgiving underfoot. The air feels moderated. The environment feels held. Quiet stability also supports diversity. When ecosystems are stable, many forms of life can coexist. No single species dominates completely. Resources are shared over time. Mushrooms help maintain this balance by supporting many organisms simultaneously. Different fungi associate with different plants. Some specialize in breaking down wood. Others focus on leaf litter or soil nutrients. Together, they create a layered support system that distributes stability throughout the environment. This layered structure prevents collapse. If one component weakens, others continue functioning. There is no single point of failure. This is stability without rigidity. It allows ecosystems to bend, adjust, and recover. Mushrooms also contribute to quiet stability by remaining mostly unseen. Their main body exists below ground. What we see above the surface is temporary and minimal. This invisibility prevents disruption. There is no competition for space or light, no sudden overcrowding. Fungal life integrates smoothly into existing structures. Even when mushrooms fruit abundantly, their presence is brief. They arrive, complete their purpose, and fade. The system returns to its baseline state without disturbance. This pattern reinforces a sense of continuity. Nothing feels interrupted, nothing feels forced. Everything resumes its place naturally. For humans, this offers a powerful contrast to environments shaped by constant intervention. In natural systems supported by fungi, maintenance happens quietly. There is no need for correction, only participation. This is one reason why spending time in forests often feels grounding. The environment does not demand attention. It does not overwhelm the senses. It simply exists in balance. Mushrooms help create that atmosphere. They regulate processes without creating noise. They support life without taking center stage. They embody a form of stability that allows movement without anxiety. As we rest with this understanding, the idea of stability begins to change. It no longer feels like something to hold on to tightly. It feels like something that emerges when systems are allowed to function as they are designed to. Mushrooms do not impose calm. They enable it. They show us that balance can arise from continuous, gentle participation rather than control. This quiet stability prepares us for the next and final stages of our journey, because after understanding how mushrooms support balance, we naturally turn inward. What does this quiet stability offer to the human mind? How does reflecting on these systems affect our own sense of rest and calm? In the next chapter, we will explore the relationship between mushrooms and the quiet mind, how their rhythms, patterns, and presence mirror the conditions that allow us to slow down and rest. The mind, much like a landscape, responds to rhythm. It settles when movement becomes predictable. It relaxes when change happens gradually. It finds rest when nothing demands immediate reaction. Mushrooms exist within this same rhythm. They do not rush. They do not compete for attention. They follow cycles that unfold quietly, without urgency or insistence. When we learn about mushrooms, we often notice something subtle happening within ourselves. Our attention slows. There is no complex sequence to track. No sharp turn in the narrative. No climax that demands anticipation. Instead, there is continuity. Growth beneath the surface. Brief appearances, gentle disappearance. This pattern mirrors the conditions under which the human mind naturally calms. The mind becomes quieter when it is not required to solve, predict, or react. Mushrooms invite observation without demand. They are interesting, but not stimulating. They offer information, but not overload. Their presence encourages a form of attention that is open rather than focused, receptive rather than effortful. This kind of attention is closely linked to rest. When the mind is allowed to remain curious without pressure, it begins to release tension. Thoughts slow, breathing deepens, the body responds. Mushrooms also shift our sense of scale. They remind us that much of life happens beyond immediate perception, that important processes do not announce themselves. This realization can be deeply soothing. It reduces the feeling that everything must be monitored, understood, or controlled. If life can continue so effectively without constant awareness, perhaps the mind can rest more easily as well. There is comfort in knowing that not everything depends on our attention. Mushrooms demonstrate that systems can regulate themselves. They do their work without instruction. They adjust without anxiety. They persist without urgency. This quiet competence offers a gentle counterpoint to the restless pace of modern thought. When the mind reflects on such systems, it often begins to imitate them. Thoughts become less linear. Awareness spreads gently rather than narrowing. There is no need to arrive anywhere. The mind simply rests with what is. Mushrooms also encourage patience. They cannot be rushed into appearance. They emerge when conditions align. This teaches a subtle lesson about timing. Some processes require waiting. Some outcomes arrive only after rest. This understanding can ease mental strain. Instead of pushing for resolution, the mind learns to allow space, to pause, to wait. Mushrooms do not reward urgency, they reward presence. They appear to those who walk slowly, who notice patterns, who are willing to look down and observe what others pass by. This gentle attentiveness is closely linked to calm states of mind. It is not the attention of effort, but the attention of allowance. Mushrooms also exist close to the ground. They do not stretch upward dramatically. They remain near soil, wood, and roots. This proximity to the earth creates a sense of grounding. When we imagine mushrooms, we imagine cool shade, soft textures, and muted light. These associations naturally slow the nervous system. They evoke environments where sound is absorbed rather than reflected, where movement is measured, and where time feels less compressed. Thinking about mushrooms often brings the mind into these spaces, and once there, the mind tends to settle. Even the way mushrooms live beneath the surface supports a calmer perspective. Most of their existence is hidden. Only a small part becomes visible. This can gently shift our relationship with our own thoughts. Not everything needs to surface. Not every thought needs attention. Some processes can remain internal, working quietly without interference. This realization can reduce mental pressure. The mind does not need to produce constantly. It can trust that useful processes continue even in stillness. Mushrooms also teach acceptance of impermanence. They appear briefly, then dissolve back into the environment. There is no sense of loss in their departure, only completion. This can soften our relationship with passing thoughts, emotions, and moments. Things can arrive, be experienced, and then leave without disruption. The mind does not need to hold on. In this way, mushrooms become quiet guides, not through instruction, but through example. They show us that life can be steady without being rigid, active without being noisy, and meaningful without being permanent. As we reflect on everything mushrooms represent, connection, adaptation, resilience, and balance, the mind naturally begins to align with these qualities. There is less urgency, less tension, less need to arrive. The mind becomes a place of gentle movement, not constant motion. This is the quiet mind mushrooms reflect back to us, not empty, not inactive, but settled. And as this sense of calm deepens, it prepares us for the final movement of our journey. Because after learning, after observing, after reflecting, there is only one thing left to do: to rest. In the next and final chapter, we will gently gather everything we have explored: the hidden kingdom beneath our feet, the ancient companions, the quiet networks, and the slow rhythms of change, and allow the journey to soften into stillness. To live quietly does not mean to withdraw from life. It means to move through it without unnecessary friction. It means responding rather than reacting, participating rather than controlling, allowing processes to unfold without constant interference. The fungal world has practiced this way of living for hundreds of millions of years, without intention, without awareness, and without instruction. And yet, its presence offers lessons that resonate deeply with the human experience. Mushrooms do not seek prominence. They do not compete for height, light, or attention. They exist comfortably at the edges, near soil, near roots, near decay. In doing so, They demonstrate that usefulness does not require visibility. Much of what sustains life happens quietly, beneath the surface, beyond recognition. This understanding alone can soften the way we move through the world. It releases the pressure to constantly perform, to be noticed, to stand apart. Mushrooms remind us that contribution can be subtle and still essential. They also show us how to exist within cycles. They arrive when conditions are right. They remain only as long as needed. They leave without resistance. There is no attachment to permanence, no attempt to extend a moment beyond its natural end. In the fungal world, completion is not loss. It is fulfillment. This perspective gently reshapes how we relate to time. Moments do not need to be stretched. Experiences do not need to be held. They can be lived fully, then allowed to pass. Mushrooms also teach patience. Their growth is not forced. Their appearance cannot be rushed. They wait, sometimes for days, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. They respond only when conditions align. This patience is not passive, it is attentive. Fungi remain present, sensing moisture, temperature, and balance. When the moment arrives, they act. This rhythm offers a quiet alternative to urgency-driven living. It suggests that readiness matters more than speed, that presence matters more than pressure, that timing, when respected, creates ease. Another lesson lies in connection. Mushrooms do not live as isolated beings. Their true body is a network, a woven system of relationships linking soil, plants, and life forms together. They thrive through cooperation, through exchange, through shared support. There is no hierarchy in these networks, no central authority. Each part responds locally, yet contributes to the stability of the whole. This model of connection stands in contrast to competitive systems. It shows how resilience can emerge from interdependence rather than dominance, how strength can be distributed rather than concentrated. Living quietly in this sense means recognizing that we are never truly separate. That stability often comes from being part of something larger without needing to control it. Mushrooms also embody acceptance of change. They do not resist disturbance, they adapt around it. When landscapes shift, fungi adjust their timing, their location, their form. They do not cling to past conditions. They work with what remains. This approach reframes change not as disruption, but as transition, a passage rather than a problem. It reminds us that adaptability does not require anxiety. It requires responsiveness. Another quiet lesson lies in humility. Mushrooms do not dominate ecosystems, they support them. They create conditions for others to grow. They prepare soil, stabilize environments, and then fade. There is no claim of ownership over the results. This humility is not weakness, it is efficiency. By not demanding recognition, mushrooms remain flexible, useful, and enduring. Living quietly, then, does not mean doing less. It means doing what is needed without excess, without friction, without noise. Mushrooms also demonstrate the power of rest. Much of their existence is spent unseen, inactive on the surface, yet fully alive below ground. They are not always producing, they are not always visible. They rest within the soil, within wood, within darkness. This resting state is not absence, It is preparation. It allows energy to gather, systems to remain stable, and responses to be ready when conditions shift. In a world that values constant output, this lesson feels especially gentle. Rest is not failure. Stillness is not stagnation. They are part of the cycle. And perhaps the most profound lesson the fungal world offers is trust. Trust in time. Trust in process. Trust in continuity. Mushrooms do not oversee the systems they support. They participate in them. They trust that their quiet work will be absorbed, integrated, and continued. They do not seek assurance, they simply continue. As we reflect on everything explored throughout this journey, the hidden kingdom beneath the surface, the ancient companionship with life, the networks of connection, the patience, the resilience, and the quiet stability, a sense of calm naturally emerges, not because everything has been explained, but because nothing needs to be rushed. The fungal world does not offer answers. It offers examples. Examples of how life can unfold with less force and more flow. How existence can be meaningful without being loud. How continuity can be maintained through gentle participation. To live quietly, as mushrooms do, is to allow space for what unfolds naturally, to move with awareness, not urgency, to trust that what needs to happen will find its moment. And with that understanding, there is nothing left to do but rest inside it. And so, little by little, our journey through the fungal world begins to settle. We've moved quietly through hidden layers of life, beneath soil, beneath forests, beneath the surface of time itself. We've seen how mushrooms live mostly unseen, working patiently below ground, connecting roots, recycling matter, supporting balance without ever asking for attention. We've followed them through deep time, as ancient companions to life on Earth, present long before forests took shape, and still here now, responding gently to change. We've explored how they adapt, how they recover, how they stabilize environments, not through force but through continuity and quiet cooperation. And along the way we noticed something subtle. As the story of mushrooms unfolded, the mind had no need to hurry. There was nothing to solve, nothing to anticipate. Only slow processes, patient rhythms, and quiet cycles repeating themselves. Mushrooms reminded us that life does not need to be loud to be effective, that growth can happen in darkness, that connection does not require visibility, that stability can emerge from gentleness. If this journey has brought you a sense of calm, let that calm remain with you now. A quiet reminder that there are still systems in the world that move without urgency, that function without noise, that support life simply by continuing. You are always welcome to return here, to listen, to learn without effort, or simply to rest in the presence of gentle ideas. But for now, allow your breathing to slow. Let your body grow heavy and comfortable. Like the mycelial networks beneath the soil, you do not need to be seen to be supported. Let your thoughts drift softly without direction. And as this moment settles into stillness, may the quiet rhythm of the fungal world accompany you gently into rest. Good night.